Alrighty, so the draw for the MLSisback tournament have just concluded, and I know there's going to be people say that the draw is rigged, which I don't blame them, considering pretty much every rivalry match in MLS is going to be taking place in the group stage, and that the only rivalry match that is not going to be taking place in the group stage happened to be the biggest rivalry, which is the Cascadia Derby. And even then, I think some people that think the draw is rigged are going to argue that MLS purposely put the Cascadia Derby not in the group stage because it's their excuse by saying that, hey, we can't possibly rig the draw if we decide to not put the biggest rivalry, which is the Cascadia Derby, in the group stage, and that some people will also argue that they probably will put the Cascadia Derby in the knockout stage, because why not make this game even more of a grand occasion by putting it in the knockout round instead of playing it in the group stage. But either way, whether or not if you agree the draw is rigged or not, this is how the group looks after the draw, and now we know where each team is going to be in terms of which group that they're going to be in and their group mates, and that, remember, each of these teams are going to be playing their group mate at least once in the group stage match, except when you're in Group A, where if you're one of those 6 teams, you only get to play 3 of the 5 teams in your group, and that there's going to be 2 teams that you are not going to be playing in the group stage match, because during the group stage, there's only free match that is going to be taking place. But that being said, let us actually talk about how these group end up and where each team end up in terms of their group. And we also will talk about where I think is the group of death and where other people think that the group of death is, and also which is the easiest group out of these 6 groups that was drawn. So we begin with Group A, which feature Orlando City, Inter Miami, NYCFC, Philadelphia Union, Chicago Fire, and Nashville SC. And fun fact, before this draw actually happened, we already knew that there's going to be 2 teams that's going to be in this group, which is Orlando City and Inter Miami. Orlando City, we kind of knew that they were going to be in Group A a couple of days ago because they were announced that they were the host of this tournament, so therefore they unfortunately get the unlucky role of being in the group that has the most team. And then just a couple of hours before the draw happened, they announced Inter Miami is going to be in Group A because they want to make sure there's going to be a Florida derby in the knockout stage. And that's also kind of a beginning sign that things are going to be very predictable of how which team is going to be in which group, and that there's probably going to be a lot of rivalry match that is going to be happening in the group stage. But other than that, when I look at this group, I know before when we begin this draw, a lot of these Eastern Conference teams do not want to be in this group because there are 6 teams in this group, which means you have even a less likely chance of moving on, considering only the top 2 team in each of these groups moves on, and that you could also move on if you're the 3rd place team, but that you have to be the best 4 of these 3rd place team out of these 3 groups. So technically, half of the group could actually move on out of Group A. But obviously, a lot of these teams don't want to be in Group A because their chances of moving on have just decreased by being in this group. But that being said, I think after this group was drawn, it's not actually that bad, and that I would say this is kind of a group where I call this the wild card group, because there are a lot of interesting things I can see out of this group. You definitely see a couple of very good teams that could challenge for the top spot. You see some teams that definitely have the potential of being very good and be a team that could challenge for that top spot. You obviously have the Florida Derby with Inter Miami and Orlando City. You obviously have the I-95 Derby between NYCFC versus the Union. And then you have the expansion Derby between Inter Miami and Nashville SC. And most importantly, you also have teams that I would call them the trap team, because these are the team that when you face them, you think you can get an easy 3 points against them. Then when you actually play them, it doesn't feel like you're going to actually have an easy time to get 3 points against them. So yeah, this is going to be interesting to see how this group is going to end up. And oh, by the way, I am going to do a prediction of each of these group a couple of days before the tournament begins. And this group probably is one of the toughest ones in terms of predicting who is going to be finished what. Not only because there's so many teams in this group, but I can definitely see all of these teams could potentially finish the top spot, and I can also see that some of these teams could actually finish bottom of this group too. But that being said, let's move on into Group B, which features Seattle Sounders, FC Dallas, Vancouver Whitecaps, and none other than my team, the San Jose Earthquakes, which there is no doubt this is the easiest group if you ask a Seattle fan, but you can also ask a Quakes fan like me, and I would even say that this is the easiest group, and that this is probably the best case scenario that the Quakes would got out of this draw. Like, I was actually very concerned the fact that we were going to potentially be in the same group as LAFC and the Galaxy, because as we have seen throughout this draw, and that the Quakes were one of the last one to be draw, we've seen how rigged the draw is when all these kind of rivalry match and all these teams that is kind of group each other, that if they didn't do a draw, you would have mistaken the fact that they actually put them together based on the region that they're in, and that I thought for sure they were going to have 3 California team in the same group, but it didn't happen. Instead, we got a very, very easy group where, you know, when you look at these 3 teams, the Whitecaps, yeah, I'm pretty sure we should be able to beat the Whitecaps, considering last year we basically beat them on an aggregate score of 6-2, and this was also the same team where we basically forced their goalkeeper to make the most save in MLS history, and yet we still beat them 3-1. And don't forget, we had 43 shots against them. And why not renew the third wheel derby between the Quakes and the Whitecaps, when considered that is probably one of the best rivalry and probably the best forgotten rivalry in the league, by putting both of these teams facing off in the group stage. But other than that, you know, FC Dallas, a team that I think the last time we lost to Dallas, the last time we lost to Dallas was back in 2016. And this was a team, we did a double against them, even in our worst year in franchise history by 2018, by beating them twice. And then the Seattle Sounders, if we only hold on to that 2-0 lead early in the season against them down in CenturyLink, we probably would have got a huge 3 points against them. And granted, yes, that match did feature a lot of missing Sounders player, and there wasn't a lot of star player. We went toe-to-toe with them earlier in the season. And then at the latter part of the season, if it wasn't for Jordan Morris scoring a heartbreaking 95th minute goal to give the Sounder the win, we probably would have got a point out of that. But my point is, the Quakes, they got a very fortunate draw, and that I expect them to move on in this next round. Like, coming into this draw, I had low expectation with the Quakes, because I thought that they were going to get a very tough group. But now seeing how they got probably the easiest group out of all these teams, there is no way in the world that they cannot be moving on out of this group. Like, if they do not move on out of this group, I am going to really lose a lot of faith of them actually doing very well this season, and that this could really be something like 2018 all over again, when we only won 4 games that season. But moving on into Group C, we got Toronto FC, New England Revolution, Montreal Impact, and DC United. And I gotta say, this is a very underrated group. Like, a lot of people won't talk about how this group is kind of a group where it's kind of a tough group for all of these teams, and that this is kind of a decent group. But I think this is kind of a low-key, a very decent group, and that all these teams does have a chance to potentially get the top spot. I mean, I know Toronto FC, they're probably going to be the favorites, considering the fact that they represent the Eastern Conference in the MLS Cup last year. But let's not forget the New England Revolution with Bruce Arena. We don't know how New England is going to look, and they could definitely be a team that could challenge for one of those top spots or move on to the next round. Montreal obviously looked very good in the Champions League and looked very good under Thierry Henry early in the season. And DC United, I know they struggle in their first couple of games and kind of got lucky against Inter Miami with the way that there was a sending off in that game. But even then, they can also provide a pretty good threat in this group. But either way, this is another one of those groups that is going to be very hard to predict, and that all 4 of these teams have a chance to potentially finish top of the group and move on. But all 4 of these teams also could potentially have the unfortunate situation where they are not going to be moving on into the next round. But moving on into Group D, which I think this group is probably the group of death, even though I know in a couple of minutes when I mention another group where a lot of people are saying that this is the group of death. But this group featured my other favorite team, Minnesota United, Colorado Rapids, Sporting KC, and Real Salt Lake. And of course, yes, I predicted the fact that one of my team is going to get screwed over and get the group of death. Although I didn't think Minnesota was going to get screwed over in that point. It is what it is after this draw is over. And also people say that why do I think this is the group of death? No, it's not because D stands for group of death. It's because all four of these teams not only are very good team, but 3 of these 4 teams, after when we went to this pandemic, won their first 2 games. Sporting KC, they won their first 2 games. Colorado Rapids, they won their first 2 games. Obviously, we know the Loons won their first 2 games, and I was at one of those games that they won. Turns out to be the most lopsided and the most high-scoring game so far this season against the Quakes. So, yeah, and even RSL, I know they struggle early in the season, and they barely scrape a draw against the Red Bulls back in match week number 2. But this is a team that knows how to move on into the next round and have a history of knowing getting the job done. So they could be also another team that could be a big threat. By the way, this could be a very interesting group. And yeah, I mean, looking at this group, I want to say that Minnesota might have a chance to finish top and they might be the favorites. But then when you look at Sporting KC and how good they look in the first two games. Now, granted, they of course play some easy opponents in the first 2 games, and I think this would be a good test for them to see whether or not if they are for real. We'll see how this group is gonna look, and that this might be another one of those groups where it's gonna be very hard to predict who is gonna finish first, and that there could be actually a team that did not make it out of this group that if they were in another group, they would have definitely made it out into the knockout stage. But now we move on into Group E, which had Elena United, FC Cincinnati, New York Red Bull, and the Columbus Crew. Obviously, we have the Hell is Real Derby. Oh, I forgot to mention in Group C, we also had the Canadian Classique between Montreal and Toronto FC. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that match is going to take place. But in Group E, obviously, we got Hell is Real Derby, and we also have one of the most heated derby in MLS that doesn't really have a name, but you know that this derby is going to be heated, or this rivalry is going to be heated, and that of course is Elena United versus the Red Bulls. I don't know about this game, but whenever this game happens, this tends to be either a very heated game or the fact that there's going to be a lot of goals that is going to be scored in this game. So I can't wait to see when both of these teams renew that rivalry when they face off each other. And obviously, I can't wait to see the Hell is Real Derby again, and whether or not if FC Cincinnati can finally get one over their rival after what happened last year when they, of course, first drew 2-2 against Columbus and then lost 3-0 in the reverse fixture of the Hell is Real Derby. But other than that, when you look at this group, obviously, Atlanta, I think they are going to be the heavy favorites in this group. And I would also say this might be the easiest, besides Seattle getting probably the easiest group, Atlanta, this might be the easiest group that they have. And even if they don't have Joseph Martinez in their lineup, I still think that they could potentially finish top. And then second place would be a really hard-fought dogfight between FC Cincinnati and the Red Bulls and Columbus, and I really think all 3 of these teams could potentially get that second spot. Then we move on into the last group, which is a group that a lot of people are saying that this is the group of death, and I can see why a lot of people are saying this is the group of death, because you got the 2 LA team in this group, which is LAFC, LA Galaxy, Houston Dynamo, and the Portland Timbers in the group. Obviously, we got El Tráfico. I knew El Tráfico was going to be drawn, or El Tráfico was going to happen in the group stage. And I knew that the 2 LA team was potentially going to get drawn even before this draw actually happen, and lo and behold, that is exactly what is going to happen. And I guess, I guess the Galaxy will be happy the fact that they get to play LAFC again, because they definitely want revenge for what happened in the playoffs when they finally lost to LAFC for the first time ever in El Tráfico. But I'm pretty sure they're not happy to see the Houston Dynamo there in the same group, mainly because the Dynamo is a team that tends to always ruin chances of the Galaxy potentially either getting a better seed in the playoffs or actually making the playoffs. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see when the Galaxy does face the Dynamo in the last match of this group stage, and if the Galaxy are all their lives in terms of moving on to the next round, and that they have to face the Dynamo, boy, that is not going to be a good feeling for Galaxy fans, and that the Galaxy will be very nervous when that, of course, would happen. But other than that, the Houston Dynamo, I know a lot of people are going to say they're the punching bag of this group, and that, a lot of people are pressing F for the Dynamo and giving them their condolence in terms of getting stuck in the toughest group. But, you never know. They could spring in some surprises, and that they could potentially move on into the next round if they were able to maybe beat the Galaxy and maybe either get a win against the Timbers and LAFC. Because remember, in this group stage match, it doesn't take a lot to either get yourself eliminated or get yourself move on into the next round. Like, you might only need to win like one out of the three and draw the other two, or win 2 out of the last 3 to guarantee yourself to move on. And then even if you lose like 1 or especially 2 games, you could potentially find yourself out of this tournament. So it is going to be very interesting to see all these teams play when this group stage happens. And I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of aggressive play in that. A lot of these teams want to get that crucial 3 points so that they can set themselves up to potentially move on into the next round. And then, of course, you got the Portland Timbers, who was the last team to be drawn in this draw. And, certainly the LAFC would really want to get some revenge against the Timbers after what happened in that U.S. Open Cup, when the Timbers, of course, knocked out LAFC at Bank of California Stadium, and only become one of the 3 teams to actually beat LAFC at Bank of California Stadium last year. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for this video, and also the groups for this little tournament. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this group, and what do you think the group of death is? And let me also know in the comments where exactly your team end up, and do you actually like where your group is? As a Quakes fan, I definitely love the fact that we got a very easy group, but also as a Minnesota fan, I'm not happy with the way that we get to be stuck in a group that I really think is the group of death. But let me know in the comments below, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.